The showroom of luxury motors reflected the dazzling light of the late afternoon sun. Floor-to-ceiling glass windows showcased rows of luxury cars like works of art, glistening under the radiant beams. At the heart of the space sat a silver Ferrari 488. Its sleek curves seeming to command Evelyn Bennett's attention as she stepped through the glass doors. Nathan Parker, the dealership's owner, stood at the reception desk. When Evelyn approached the Ferrari, he gave her a fleeting, indifferent glance before resuming his animated conversation with another salesperson. His laughter rang out loudly, as if attempting to fill the expansive space. Other customers, primarily middle-aged gentlemen in elegant suits, accompanied by young, glamorous women, wandered between the cars with the ease of those accustomed to a life of opulence. They nodded at Nathan, as though they were part of an exclusive club, where every rule and norm was implicitly understood. Evelyn observed the people around her with a mix of curiosity and determination, fully aware of the intricate dynamics of this society and ready to face the challenges ahead. "Excuse me," she finally spoke, her hand lightly gliding over the polished surface of the Ferrari. "I'd like to learn more about this car." Nathan turned slowly, his icy gaze sweeping over her appearance with unmistakable disdain. Though she was elegantly dressed and carried herself with poise, the corner of his mouth twitched upward in a sneer as he responded. "Perhaps you'd feel more comfortable at our used car lot outside the city," he said, his tone dripping with contempt, each word carefully chosen to cut at her dignity. "This Ferrari is a symbol of Italian luxury and technological excellence," he continued, clearly intent on highlighting the gulf between them. Evelyn stood taller, the soft rustle of her silk dress punctuating her subtle shift in posture. Yet her voice remained steady, honed by years of dealing with men who sought to underestimate her. "I'm well aware of Ferrari's reputation," she replied. "I'm particularly interested in this model's engine, performance, and customization options." Nathan let out a loud laugh, one laced with triumph, reverberating through the showroom. His gaze swept over Evelyn with condescension, as if appraising someone unworthy of standing in such a lavish space. "Miss," he said, his tone thick with sarcasm, "this Ferrari is worth more than most people's earnings over 5 years. I doubt you could afford it, so I won't waste your time." He brushed past Evelyn, a smug smile on his face, and turned to his colleague, exchanging a knowing look that seemed to share some unspoken jest. The surrounding customers, mostly affluent individuals, couldn't help but notice the disdain in Nathan's words. They cast sidelong glances at Evelyn, their expressions betraying subtle judgment as they noted her identity, a woman of color. Seemingly affirming Nathan's assessment, Evelyn felt the stark prejudice in Nathan's gaze, but she refused to let it deter her. Taking a deep breath, she straightened her posture and, with a voice unwavering and resolute, responded, "It's you who's wasting your time right now." Her eyes locked onto Nathan's, sharp and brimming with confidence. The showroom fell silent for a moment. No one dared to speak. The surrounding customers began to turn their attention to the confrontation, realizing it was no longer just a dispute between a salesperson and a customer, but a clash of societal expectations and prejudices. Nathan froze for a brief moment, surprised by the strength in Evelyn's words, though he tried to maintain a calm exterior, unwilling to lose in this battle of wits. Evelyn, meanwhile, stood her ground, as all eyes fixed on her, waiting for Nathan to fulfill his promise. Nathan struggled to keep his composure, though the confidence in his eyes had slightly faltered. "Do you really think you can buy this car?" he asked, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "For people like you, this is just a far-fetched dream. These cars aren't meant for those who don't understand their true value." Evelyn refused to let his insult affect her. She met his gaze head-on, her eyes unwavering as they locked on Nathan's disdainful face. "And you think these cars are only for people like you?" she replied, her voice calm but taut. "For those who rely on prejudice and arrogance to judge another's worth. Surely you know this car can't reflect the true value of a person, don't you?" Nathan scoffed, his expression shifting from contempt to anger. "You speak as if you know anything," he sneered. "Not everyone can easily step into this world where everything has a price. If you really want to know, I'll tell you outright. This car isn't for people who aren't worthy. And you, clearly, aren't someone who can own it." Evelyn drew a deep breath, feeling the tension in the air. She could not allow herself to be subdued by such disdain. "You can think whatever you like about me," she said, her voice sharp as a blade. "But you don't have the right to define my worth or the worth of this car. I work hard every day to stand here, and I don't need your approval, or anyone else's, to prove I deserve what I want." The two stood face to face, the atmosphere thick with intensity, so much so that those around them felt as if a battle of wills was about to unfold. Nathan began to feel the pressure, but maintained a facade of calm. "You think you can challenge me in this fight?" he asked, his eyes filled with defiance. Evelyn didn't reply immediately. She glanced at the gleaming Ferrari, then back at Nathan with unwavering confidence. "I don't need to challenge anyone," she said. "I just need you to understand that the truth doesn't always align with what you want to believe. I can buy this car, and you will be the one to sell it to me." Nathan fell silent, sensing the strength behind Evelyn's words. After a long pause, he shrugged and sneered again. "Fine. You can prove whatever you want, but I won't easily discard the prejudice I hold against you." "Then keep living with those prejudices," Evelyn responded without hesitation. "As for me, I'll keep moving forward without needing anyone's approval." Nathan's initial amusement morphed into clear frustration. The polished facade he had maintained began to crack, revealing the darker side of his personality. He stepped closer to Evelyn, a fake smile plastered on his face, trying to save face in front of the other customers. "Listen here," he said coldly, invading her personal space with a menacing undertone. "Luxury Motors. We have our own rules and standards. We serve clients who are deserving of these products. Surely you understand that." He gestured sharply toward the door, this time with more force, as if trying to push her out. "Perhaps you should leave before things get uncomfortable." Evelyn stood firm, the evening light reflecting off her high-end silk dress as she lifted her head, meeting Nathan's gaze head-on. Years of battling against prejudices surrounding gender and race had taught her when to yield and when to stand her ground. She recalled boardrooms where she had been the only woman, the only person of color, fighting to be heard and respected. This moment was no different, and she was ready to face it. "I want to speak to your manager," Evelyn said, her voice calm yet razor sharp. She knew exactly what his response would be. It was a calculated move, meant to force Nathan to confront the truth of his bias. "I'm the owner here," Nathan declared with evident pride, his chest puffing out, "and I'm asking you to leave immediately." When Evelyn remained still, refusing to move, Nathan's face turned beet red, his anger rising visibly from his collar to the tips of his hair. He glared at her with hostility, clutching his phone tightly as he barked out an order without hesitation. "Security!" Nathan shouted, his voice slicing through the air like a blade. He quickly tapped his phone, his expression filled with resolve as though bracing for battle. "I'm calling the police. We don't need people like you causing trouble here." His final words were spat with a particular venom, and the polished veneer he had maintained until that moment crumbled, revealing a much darker side. The customers in the showroom began turning their heads, watching the scene unfold in stunned silence. The air in the room grew thick with tension, every gaze now fixed on Evelyn. Remaining composed, Evelyn locked eyes with Nathan, her expression unchanged. She could feel the weight of the moment, but her heart remained steady. She had faced discrimination and disdain before, though never so blatant in public. Part of her wanted to reveal her true identity, to relish the look of shame on Nathan's face when he realized his mistake. But a deeper part of her knew that sometimes the strongest move was to let the opponent unravel their own faults without interference. At that moment, 2 security guards entered, their expressions cold and their hands poised for action. Nathan pointed at Evelyn, his voice decisive. "Get her out of here immediately." One of the guards approached her, his eyes devoid of empathy. "You need to leave," he said, his tone firm with authority. "We don't have time for people like you." Evelyn stood her ground, though she recognized the tension in the air. "I've done nothing wrong," she replied, her voice steady. "He's the one who insulted me." The guard remained silent, moving closer, his large hand gripping her arm firmly. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be," he said, though a faint growl underlined his words. Evelyn didn't resist, but maintained a frosty gaze fixed on Nathan, her eyes radiating defiance. Nathan stepped closer, a smug smile creeping across his face, his eyes gleaming with contempt. "You see? No one wants people like you here," he said, his satisfaction dripping from every word. Evelyn turned to look at him one last time, her gaze sharp as a blade. "Just because you think I can't afford your car doesn't mean I'm incapable," she said, each word laced with conviction. "And I won't forget this insult." The security guards dragged her outside, but Evelyn remained composed. Even though she was handcuffed and being hauled away, she felt an unusual sense of satisfaction within her, because she knew that even if she was pushed out today, this was just the beginning. Evelyn had faced discrimination throughout her life, but it had never been as blatant and public as it was now. Each time, she had to fight to prove her worth, dealing with judgmental looks and cold words. But this time, when Nathan openly insulted her in front of everyone, a bitter feeling rose within her. A part of her wanted to reveal her true identity right then, to see the shock on Nathan's face when he realized she wasn't who he thought she was. She imagined the scene, his stunned face, flushed with embarrassment when he learned that he had misjudged her. But there was another part of her, a deeper and more strategic part, that knew sometimes the most powerful move was to let the opponent make their own mistakes. If she stayed silent and let him believe he was right, he would be the one facing the consequences when the truth came out. She didn't need to do anything, just let things unfold naturally, Nathan's arrogance and pride would lead him to make a mistake without even realizing it. She understood that people like him often corner themselves when they become too self-satisfied. And Evelyn was willing to wait because she knew that her silence in this moment was her greatest victory. Evelyn was not the daughter of a wealthy family like many others. She had grown up in an orphanage without the care of parents, but that never made her weak. On the contrary, it had shaped in her a spirit of resilience and a determination to rise above. Although she wasn't born into a favorable situation, she always strived to be exceptional. As a student, she had to face prejudice and contempt from her peers simply because of her skin color. The harsh words and cold stares never made her falter. Evelyn did not let discrimination destroy her self-confidence. Instead, she turned it into motivation to excel academically. She knew the only way to prove her worth was through her grades, by overcoming academic challenges. And in the end, she succeeded. She became one of the top students in her class, silencing her peers. After graduation, Evelyn married a man who loved her deeply, and they had a son named Avis. However, life was never as easy as she had imagined. When Avis was just 2 years old, her husband tragically died in a car accident, leaving Evelyn to raise their young child alone. The pain of the loss was immense, but Evelyn didn't allow herself to fall. She was determined to continue pursuing her dream of becoming successful in the finance field, not just for herself, but also for her little son. Evelyn didn't want Avis to grow up in a world full of prejudice, where people like her had to fight their entire lives for recognition. She taught her son how to face challenges and never give up on his dreams. She knew that although life might not be fair, persistence could make anything possible. Avis inherited his mother's sharp intellect and determination, along with his father's impressive height and athletic physique. He graduated from law school with honors, specializing in corporate law and civil rights litigation. Avis quickly gained a reputation in the corporate law field, known for his meticulous preparation and absolute effectiveness in the courtroom. By the age of 27, he was one of the youngest partners at Morgan & Gray, the most prestigious law firm in the city. Avis's expertise made him a formidable opponent in the field of law, particularly in mergers and acquisitions and discrimination law. He built a solid reputation for fighting against companies engaged in discriminatory practices, using the law as a precise and powerful tool. His cases were considered legendary in the legal world, not only for their victories, but also for his attention to detail in exposing systemic discrimination and forcing companies to change under legal and public pressure. Avis sat across from his mother, Evelyn, in the minimalist living room of their new home. He looked at her, her eyes filled with anger and determination. "Mom, I can't just sit by and watch this happen anymore," Avis said, his voice choked but resolute. "I won't let them keep hurting you like this." Evelyn was silent for a moment, her eyes flashing with exhaustion, but also with empathy for her son's determination. "Avis, you don't need to do this," she replied, her voice soft but filled with concern. "I'm used to facing discrimination. Don't let it affect your life." Avis could not remain silent. "You don't understand, Mom. I can't let anyone treat you like you're worthless. They can't treat us like this just because of our skin color. I will fight for justice for you, no matter how difficult it is." Evelyn looked at her son, her gaze slowly changing from worry to pride. "You've always had that determination," she said, her voice gentler now. "But I don't want you to sacrifice too much for this. You still have your future ahead of you." Avis took her hand, his gaze unwavering. "You are my future. I can't stand by and watch what's happened without doing something. I will fight, and you'll see, we will make it." Evelyn said nothing more, but her eyes lit up, filled with faith in her son. Evelyn sat quietly in her office, her sharp eyes scanning the documents and information about Nathan Parker. Every page, every contract, and every event related to the case was carefully examined. Evelyn knew that this time she could not let the discrimination go unchallenged. She would not simply seek justice. She would teach Nathan Parker a lesson. She looked at a phone, opened a secure contact list, and called one of her longtime friends, an esteemed lawyer specializing in finance and human rights. "David, I need your help with a lawsuit. Please prepare the files for me. I want to take down Nathan Parker." Avis, in another part of the house, was also deep in thought about how to help his mother achieve justice. He had met with the witnesses from the car dealership that day. Though they were initially hesitant, when Avis explained the importance of truth and fairness, they decided to stand by her. Avi smiled, grateful for their support. But he knew he couldn't solely rely on others' testimonies. He decided to meet directly with the two security guards at the car dealership who had treated his mother disrespectfully. He understood this would be a tough meeting, but if possible, he would convince them to provide evidence for his mother's lawsuit. The meeting took place in a small restaurant where Avis sat facing one of the security guards. He appeared uneasy but did not refuse the meeting. "I don't want to get involved in this mess," he said, his voice anxious. "You don't have to worry," Avis replied, her voice steady and calm. "This isn't about your trouble. It's about justice. If you provide me with the necessary information, you won't have to worry about any consequences. But if you remain silent, the truth will remain hidden, and the one causing harm will be people like Nathan Parker." The meeting didn't last long, but Avis sensed a shift in his eyes. He no longer stubbornly refused. "All right," he finally sighed. "I'll tell you what I know." Avis felt a sense of relief, knowing she was getting closer to bringing justice for her mother. Her mother's preparation and her own efforts were starting to bear fruit. A week later, Avis arranged a meeting with Nathan Parker in his office. She walked in confidently, showing no signs of nervousness. Nathan Parker was sitting behind his desk, his sharp gaze as usual, but when he saw Avis, an inexplicable look of unease appeared on his face. Avis smiled coldly, but her eyes were full of determination. She opened her mouth, her voice filled with confidence and careful preparation. "Mr. Parker," Avis began, speaking evenly but powerfully, "I believe you had a meeting with my mother, Evelyn Bennett, last week. She's the woman you tried to throw out of your dealership just for wanting to buy a car. An expensive car, one that you, apparently, can't understand the value of." Nathan Parker's face immediately turned pale when he realized the memory of the incident flooding back like a nightmare he had tried to forget. His hands began to tremble, unable to hide his anxiety as his eyes locked on the documents Avis had placed on his desk. Each page was like a wound on his conscience. Irrefutable evidence. "This is a notice of legal action against your dealership, Luxury Motors, for discriminatory behavior, unlawful detention, and defamation." Avis continued, her voice calm but firm. She glanced at the documents and looked him straight in the eye, unwavering. I will also file an official complaint with the Consumer Protection Bureau and the Civil Rights Commission. My legal team has gathered sufficient evidence and statements from witnesses to the incident." Avis smiled, grateful for their support. But he knew he couldn't solely rely on others' testimonies. He decided to meet directly with the two security guards at the car dealership who had treated his mother disrespectfully. He understood this would be a tough meeting, but if possible, he would convince them to provide evidence for his mother's lawsuit. The meeting took place in a small restaurant where Avis sat facing one of the security guards. He appeared uneasy but did not refuse the meeting. "I don't want to get involved in this mess," he said, his voice anxious. "You don't have to worry," Avis replied, her voice steady and calm. "This isn't about your trouble. It's about justice. If you provide me with the necessary information, you won't have to worry about any consequences. But if you remain silent, the truth will remain hidden, and the one causing harm will be people like Nathan Parker." The meeting didn't last long, but Avis sensed a shift in his eyes. He no longer stubbornly refused. "All right," he finally sighed. "I'll tell you what I know." Avis felt a sense of relief, knowing she was getting closer to bringing justice for her mother. Her mother's preparation and her own efforts were starting to bear fruit. A week later, Avis arranged a meeting with Nathan Parker in his office. She walked in confidently, showing no signs of nervousness. Nathan Parker was sitting behind his desk, his sharp gaze as usual. But when he saw Avis, an inexplicable look of unease appeared on his face. Avis smiled coldly, but her eyes were full of determination. She opened her mouth, her voice filled with confidence and careful preparation. "Mr. Parker," Avis began, speaking evenly but powerfully, "I believe you had a meeting with my mother, Evelyn Bennett, last week. She's the woman you tried to throw out of your dealership just for wanting to buy a car. An expensive car, one that you apparently can't understand the value of." Nathan Parker's face immediately turned pale when he realized the memory of the incident flooding back like a nightmare he had tried to forget. His hands began to tremble, unable to hide his anxiety, as his eyes locked on the documents Avis had placed on his desk. Each page was like a wound on his conscience, irrefutable evidence. "This is a notice of legal action against your dealership, Luxury Motors, for discriminatory behavior, unlawful detention, and defamation," Avis continued, her voice calm but firm. She glanced at the documents and looked him straight in the eye, unwavering. "I will also file an official complaint with the Consumer Protection Bureau and the Civil Rights Commission. My legal team has gathered sufficient evidence and statements from witnesses to the incident." Nathan Parker tried to regain his composure, but couldn't hide his confusion. You can't do this," he stammered, his hands trembling as he held the papers that Avis had handed him. "You don't know who you're messing with." Avis remained unwavering. "You'll find out soon enough, Mr. Parker. Your actions have consequences, and I won't allow my mother to be treated like this. This is not a game. This is justice. The justice that you'll have to pay for." When Nathan realized the true identity of Evelyn Bennett, his mouth went dry, his eyes widening as he looked at the detailed documents, clearly seeing the serious charges and potential damages listed. "Wait, there must be some kind of misunderstanding," he stammered, his initial confidence quickly fading, replaced by a growing sense of unease. "Oh, I understand perfectly," Avis interrupted, his tone calm and assured, adjusting his expensive watch, a special gift from his mother when he secured his first legal victory. I understand that you had my mother, Evelyn Bennett, CEO of Bennett Financial Group, handcuffed and detained just because she tried to buy a car from your dealership. I know you laughed when that happened, and I understand that your actions have violated at least 15 state and federal laws. He paused, letting every word sink into the air with cold, precise accuracy. And I also understand that this isn't the first time you've acted this way. My firm has received testimony from 3 other individuals who've experienced similar situations at your dealership. Nathan turned pale, his mouth stammering. Bennett Financial Group. The name and the implications behind it seemed to start sinking into his mind. That's right, Avis confirmed, offering a faint but confident smile. Just like his mother, a week ago. Bennett Financial Group, the company that holds controlling shares in Luxury Motors International, your parent company, as of this morning. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle deeper. My mother always taught me how to invest wisely. It's amazing what you can achieve when you have the right strategy and patience. Nathan collapsed into his swivel chair, the laughter from a week ago now replaced by a horrifying silence. The awards hanging on the wall now seemed to mock him, proof of success built on bias and privilege, and now they were about to come crashing down. "Oh, bless me," said Nathan. "If that's fashion, I never heard it." Vernon turned around. His eyes remained fixed on Rachel. "You'll receive notice from the board this afternoon," Avis continued, calmly adjusting his cufflink. "But I wanted to deliver this personally. My mother also taught me the importance of looking someone in the eye when delivering important news." His voice carried no anger, only the calm certainty of justice being served. Nathan's mind raced as he tried to find a way out, searching for an explanation or justification that could save his position. But as he thought about Evelyn Bennett, the steadfast woman, he realized the full extent of the mistake he had made. This wasn't just about a woman he had misjudged. It was a systemic issue that had finally caught up with him. "Mr. Parker," Nathan began, his voice so low it was almost a whisper, "surely we can come to some sort of arrangement. I didn't realize." Avis raised his hand, stopping Nathan mid-sentence. "Mr. Parker," Avis spoke, "the time for negotiation and justifications has passed. What happens next will be decided by the board and the court. I advise you to use this time to reflect on how you have conducted business and treated others. Perhaps something good will come from this situation if you learn from it." As Avis turned to leave, he paused by the door, hand on the gleaming doorknob. "Oh, Mr. Parker, my mother has decided to buy the silver Ferrari 488 from your competitor across the city. They've been much more welcoming." Avis's smile grew a little wider. "In fact, she bought 2, one for her and one for me. We'll occasionally drive by here to admire the view." The door closed behind Avis, leaving Nathan Parker alone, with his regrets and the memories of days gone by, and the memories of days that never would have existed if someone such as he had not humbly defied himself to be the god. In the end, mother and son were successful in this case. They sat in their new silver Ferrari 488, Evelyn Bennett smiling as she drove by Luxury Motors for the last time. The smooth engine roared beneath her feet, and she knew she had taught Avis well. Not only about business and the law, but also about something more important. Justice, though cold, is still justice, and sometimes the most subtle revenge is showing others the consequences of their actions. Avis sat next to his mother, eyes gazing out the window, where the fading sunset light reflected on the car's glossy surface. He felt a newfound peace, as though everything had fallen into place. The challenging journey they had been through, full of trials and careful steps, had led them to this moment where justice was not only served, but demonstrated through action. Evelyn gently pressed the accelerator, the Ferrari speeding down the road, and Avis felt a swell of pride in his chest. They had done this with intelligence, patience, and determination. The values his mother had always believed in. They had not only defeated an individual, but a system of injustice, taking a firm step forward in the fight for justice. Have you ever faced discrimination or prejudice in a place where you fully deserved to be? If so, how did you confront and handle the situation? How did it affect you? If you were Evelyn Bennett, would you choose legal action to seek justice or handle it differently? Some people mean harm and some want to protect, and as we've learned, empathy and effective legal representation might be the solution to both the violence and the prejudice. Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Thank you for following this inspiring story. Don't forget to join us for more meaningful stories.